Hello, my name is Chris Ebeling, and welcome to another online SkillBASE July month 2025, where we're talking about young professionals. In this episode and in this segment, I have the pleasure of welcoming on Balazs Kerek from Digic Pictures. Digic Pictures is one of the best cinematic digital studios in Europe, in the world. They have done amazing stuff. Balazs will talk about some of the work they did on Love, Death, and Robots Season 1, including Assassin's Creed trailers and much, much more. They are an incredible studio, always pushing the limits of technology. Balazs is a CG supervisor with, I believe he's been there for 13 years and is going to give you a wealth of experience. He does deep dive a little bit into some technologies, but we try to keep it surface level. Really, our focus of this talk, of course, is how can we empower young professionals, young students, graduates that are coming into the industry or just started in the industry to remain relevant, to keep learning, to stay curious. We talk about empathy, curiosity, being observant, but also new technologies and how to embrace them. We will be talking about AI. We will be talking about real-time engines, and then we'll be talking about everything in between. I hope you enjoy this what do we call it, a podcast, webcast, interview, this chat. Would love feedback. Feedback is always welcome. But yeah, sit back, relax. It's listening, so you don't have to look at our faces as we talk. That's optional. We are just taking you through lifelong experiences between two artists, one very technical, one very creative, and everything in between. Hello and welcome to another segment of Online Skills Base with me, your host, Chris Ebeling. This is July month, so we're talking about young professionals. I'm delighted to have with me here today the awesome Balazs Kerek from Digic Studios, a CG supervisor with a wealth of experience. Luckily, I know Balazs pretty. I've gotten to know him pretty well through our travels and work together. He has an abundance of knowledge, really smart guy, does amazing work, and I cannot wait to jump into this conversation. So, Balazs, without further ado, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello. Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope I will live up to it. My name is Balazs Kerek. Currently, I'm a CG supervisor, but I worked as a shot TD coordinator, a lot of things. So I think I have some experience, and I'm very keen on trying new technologies. Maybe that's an important thing.
Yeah, I think what we want to talk about here today is, of course, some standard questions about what it means to be a young professional and what they should look out for. Our audience is really, students, young graduates, and young professionals, people who've just come out of school who are looking for that next job or looking for that advice on how to break into the industry, or some people who are already in the industry already that are looking to remain relevant and, of course, stay in the industry. As we know, the industry is it's a place where things happen fast and changes happen a lot. I've been in it for 20 years and, I've never stayed at one place for longer than a, couple, I'd say 12 to 16 months personally. And I jumped around as a freelancer, right? Wasn't until I got into education where I actually held a role for like 3 years. And that's not because I wasn't capable. It's just the ebbs and flows of industry, the chops and changes. But you, Balazs, of course, have been with Digic for quite some time. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience at Digic as well and some of the cool projects? I think it would be nice to hear about some of the projects you guys have done.
Yeah, of course. I think my case is a little bit special in the matter that how I got in is that I was an environment coordinator at first, but I started to do renders and they did not like it because that's a technical job. So at the end, I became a shot TD, which is something that does not exist everywhere. It's a mixture of lighting TD and render TD, and I liked it very much. And over the years, my first project that I did as a shot TD was one of the Assassin's Creed cinematics. And the interesting thing was that I was really careful about my shots, and the two out of those six shots that I was doing were cut. And it was a very interesting feeling that I put the same energy into it and it was not there,
Mm,
but the experience was there, of course. And then I became senior shot TD, then I became like lead, but I still trying to push things. So now I'm a CG soup and trying to maintain projects technically. Most often I have problematic projects a little bit because I can handle the stress and the I like to finish projects so I get the problematic projects.
mm,
So basically there were a few that I'm very proud about at Digic, and one of those is the Love, Deaths and Robots first episode. First series. There was an episode, um, The Secret War, and
mm.
it was a very crazy one.
The
And
horses and the horses and the warriors
yeah,
on the
yeah,
mountain
and
cliff top in the
yes,
snow
yes,
fighting.
indeed.
Yeah, that was wild.
It was a very good one, and I'm pretty like to do like the epic trailers. I mean the cinematic ones where we try to do something for the readers when you're trying to do like something a vision for the book, you
Mm,
know. And I really love when you can see more of a world that you are playing in than you actually can with the technology.
yeah.
So those are, I think, the highlights. And technically, I'm not an artist in this company. I'm a technician, and I think for youngsters, it's very important to understand that it's not so a part of the job is equally important than the job that is in the surface.
Mm,
So even though from all of those movies I did, I would not be able to cut a reel because what I write there, I rendered it, I changed the render layers or did something, but overall I know that what I did for that project enabled artists to do more.
yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
think
like
that's
just a
amazing. I mean, it is your responsibility to get those final pixels up on the screen, right? And for anybody who's been in the industry, we understand, and anybody, I mean, many of the students out there, I'm sure you know how hard it is to get a really crisp render out, and the layers that are needed, and also then the post processing and the comping that needs to happen on top of it to get that final beautiful looking, you know, frame, and then it's multiple frames in a row that have to be succinct and perfect, right? So, from my experience being in the industry, you don't finish a movie without people like Balazs. You don't finish a movie without technical animators as well as technical directors and technical artists. They are as much needed and if not more in many ways. It's one of the most sought out. I mean, that's some advice for youngsters out there. If you are technical and you like solving problems and getting into the code and trying to problem solve, you will be employable directly. I mean, because those are really the competencies that are needed, right? And I think
yeah,
we can talk.
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I often do when I'm talking with like students is that what I'm trying to do, trying to tell them is my experience that I found out early that I really like technology. I really like super art. I mean, I can admire the art in the movie, but I'm just like I can't put in the time to like painting or something because what's in my head does not come to the paper easily, and you should spend like 10,000 hours or something. But but what I found out is that when I was trying to solve a problem, I had like the joy of like the Zima style thing that you execute the job well done, and I found out that constantly I'm trying to make systems for me to do art easier. And then I found out that I'm good in systems. And if I do that, it will enable artists who are like focused on art, it will enable them to iterate more.
Yeah.
So it's a back and forth thing and it works.
Yeah.
Most often on other companies it's lighting TD or something like that. But it works fine. It's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, I was an animator for 10 years. Um, and we couldn't finish a show without technical animators. So there's TAs, right? And they're the ones who come in and fix, when there's rigs going wrong or something's breaking, even as far as a scene file not loading up, right? They're the ones who get inside the Maya file or the XSI file or the Blender file and really try to figure out why this file is corrupt or not working, and they can go into the code and start fixing things. And again, like, so empowering the artists to do their job so we don't have to focus on the technical stuff, because my brain is the other opposite of yours. I think I'm more about the colors, the visuals, the appeal, the final pixel in the creative sense. But together, and this is probably a really cool thing also to understand, like in terms of the soft skills and the teamwork aspect. I'm not going to be able to do my job without you, and you're not going to be able to do your job without me, right? So we have to perform in symbiosis, like a perfect orchestra, and you're playing a music together, right? Whether it's jazz or whatever it is, we're jamming and we need each other, right? And we need to play off each other. So just to kind of go on, and I really want to get into a couple of questions. I know that me and you have been talking a lot lately about AI. But before we get into that, I would like to just kind of ask this question: what technical skills are currently in demand across the digital entertainment sector? So, what are you guys seeing in Digic right now? Like, what are the skills that you're looking for when bringing new artists on board or new technical developers on board?
Well, I think what happens now is a little bit of shift into things. It's getting slow because it's a big change what's happening in the industry. I think there's no one in the world can say what will happen exactly. My guess on the things is that it will be everyone will think that it's that you will need to know nothing to create art. My understanding of the thing is that if you learn traditional art and if you admire that thing, then you will be able to ask AI the question, and you won't allow yourself to AI to finish the job because you will want it as a tool in the tool set instead of the creator.
Hmm.
So I know it's a little bit deep at the start, but it's an important thing to state that in the whole industry, what will happen, in my opinion, is that the ones who are not motivated anymore or don't want to do more than they are doing and think that everything will stay the same, they will have a bad time. And
Mm.
anyone who has vision, who wants to do something, is living in the best time and
Yeah.
place ever, because it's very easy to get to the information and you get a lot of help. For me, when I started, so I like have experience that I talked with someone over the internet, then I put money I sent a real mail to someone and he sent back an FTP site where I can grab, I don't know, 3DX Max 4 or something. It's more than 10 years, so it's
Hmm.
obsolete. But but that kind of information, I had an idea, I could read a book 4 weeks later, no one to ask and everything.
Yeah.
And now if someone thinks something, he can get the information quickly. So that's the main thing that I really like about it, and constantly pushing the AI as well.
Yeah.
So for in the aspect of youngsters, I really think that they have a very good time if they want to craft something.
Yeah.
So if they have the idea that they want to do something meaningful, that will happen quicker than ever.
I agree. I agree. I
If
think,
the, yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Just to kind of to add on to that, I think curiosity is the key. Always being curious to what the new tools are coming and what's coming out. It doesn't mean you have to use them, but I think you need to understand what they can do, because there will be a shift. There is a constant shift always in the industry. We're always changing, whether it's from 2D to 3D, from 3D keyframe to motion capture. And we still have 2D. We still use 2D. We still use 3D animation. We still have motion capture. Now we can use all three of these together. And to your point, prompting AI is not just about anybody can just make art, because the people with fundamental skills, the students who have gone through a 3 or 4 year degree and have been taught the right way in terms of what good color scripts are, composition, storytelling, camera narrative, all those key foundational, skills are still needed as you as a director of the AI and you as the prompter of the final pixel. So I 100% agree. I want to kind of roll back again on the question and just go like, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, but when you are hiring at Digi, let's say you're looking at 3 candidates today to come on board your team, what are you looking for? Like specifically, what are you looking for? If you're talking to a junior right now, would you like to see on their a show reel or experience and profile?
Well, in my experience, what I do is that I'm looking for the same kind of interest and like so I want to see the spark in the eye that someone wants to create, because
Mhm.
it's like a mutual benefit for the company and for the youngster as well. Because if you are in a big company, those magical walls, with the understanding of how great something is, the stress of the projects, it like faints a little. And every time a youngster come and he admires or she admires everything around the company, then you can relive what you had. Because of course, after a time, after I'm here for 13 years, many people have come and go. Um, I have beautiful like relationships and everything with those guys. So in my understanding, if someone wants to create art and have that spark in the eye that he will do everything or she will do everything it's possible for the goal, then I don't even care about the response. I mean, the experience.
Mm,
Because in a big company, for example, if you come as a TD, we have our framework, we have everything,
yeah,
so we can teach the basics to anyone because there's like information, but you can't teach the thing that you want to crave the new things. So if you can find that, then that youngster will have the best place ever to shine.
yeah.
And also another important aspect when I actually say during the interviews that if I found someone who's like super creative as well, but he wants to get into the industry, like no matter which position, just get into the company. A lot of are like that. I constantly tell them that you can come here, you can learn a lot, and you can do your art at home. If you want to mix it, if you want to shape how a movie looks, then you're not. So you then have to be a director
Hmm.
or an art director or a lead on some of the creative aspects.
Yeah.
But if I so it's very important that many of the guys are thinking that if they come to a big company, they will do their own vision. And what happens actually is that you will learn how to do others' visions. You will learn how to put down a project you don't want to because you want to do the finest one, but that was the budget limit. So you actually learn a lot of things that you can't learn alone. So
I'd love to just stay on that for a minute because that's a super important note. I think what we see as well with students, because students, and especially, we're talking about the best students out there are the ones who usually come into companies, right? You got to have a great portfolio, you got to have a great attitude, you got to really get in the door. That's check one. But then usually with these students are coming from schools where they were, the best, right? And here they could direct their own shorts. Here they had more to say. And so they have to be, and we did some research on this actually through Panorama, which you can see on our Panorama website on work environment and soft skills. Students have to be adaptable now. They have to go in with that kind of attitude to get the interview to say, yeah, I was the best and I did this and I directed that and I did that. But once they get to the interview, the important thing is they have to now shift and go, now it's a can do attitude. Now it's a, yeah, I can do this. I can work here. I can slot myself in and be adaptable and be agile and work in a team where I'm not the lead, where I'm not the director, where I'm working on someone else's vision. And just to throw some anecdotes in there from my time, you know, I've worked on a few movies where I would say they're not the greatest movies at all. I'll mention one, Gods of Egypt, which, it's a 3-hour mess. But I learned a lot and I did my shots to the perfection that I could do it to. But understanding that, some of the camera moves were crazy. I did this one sequence where I don't know what, I'm sorry, what the director was thinking, but it's like rotating around. It's on green screen. It's shot on all these and we had to animate on that and animate these creatures fighting, the main character. So it was live action CG. And as good as we made it look, it just never looked good because there was a final direction on how these cameras had to go. And for anybody who's seen that movie, I mean, thanks for watching. But again, for me, then as an artist and someone who is learning on the job, I just took away like, okay, you get experience from working, CG, live action on complex camera moves. Like I was learning, so it's not always about, like you said before, the final pixel, because sometimes shots don't make it through. Like you said, like I worked on a show as well where like 3 months of work got cut, but it's about the process. You're learning in that process, and you're getting all this free education and building your skills up, despite people seeing the final result or not. You're still learning and you're still improving yourself and growing, right? So to your point, for anybody out there, please go read our research on soft skills and work environments, because a lot of the stuff Balazs is mentioning now is super key to that. And B, you need to be humble and you need to be agile and you need to understand when you come in and work for someone like Digic Pictures or a big film studio or game company, you're a piece of a longer puzzle. You're part of a bigger machine. And just like me and Balaz was saying like before, that the artists need the technical people need the artists, and you need to work together. So again, soft skills, humility, communication, all these things are super key. So yeah, I love that we got there, Balaz. And that
Yeah,
kind of
maybe.
yeah, sorry, jump in.
Yeah. So maybe just one addition to this, that what so Digic now is like more companies on things like cinematics or VR stuff or real-time engines.
Mm,
And recently I'm working on a on the studios part. So I like experienced how you go into a new team nowadays. And it was a very interesting experience, as when I joined like 13 years ago, I was like the guy who was like the sponge. I went in the company like a shadow. I sit behind guys, checked what they are doing on the monitors, contacted them, tell them who I am, what I would like to know, how cool they are, how come they don't like the projects they do because they are awesome. So all those things, and I had the chance to like connect with everybody. And this time around, everyone is working from home, so that's much harder to get into a community. And it's not the same when you sit together. It's not the same on a Discord server or anything.
no,
So that's something, what might be an important thing, that until you are not very familiar with the company, you're better off going to the place, and it will be a much more complex and better experience. And also on the other end, you will have the option to go into work and then come home from work.
yeah,
Because for me, I mean, I'm a special type of crazy dude, but for me, it never ends.
yeah.
So,
Switching
but
on and switching off, right? Work life balance.
yeah,
Agree.
or I mean, it ends, but it's not like I'm working from 9 to 6,
No,
but I'm like taking 2 hours there. But at midnight, I have an idea, and I just
yeah,
check in what's going on, and then you're there working.
yeah,
And it's the hard part of it's the beautiful and the hard part as well of if you work what your hobby is, then it's a trap at the same time,
yeah,
but you are still luckier than majority of the people who do a work that he don't like,
yeah.
so
Totally. Look, this resonates so much. I mean, actually, just to give you another anecdote, Panorama. The idea of Panorama was founded because of also the skills gap that was created due to COVID, right? And there was already a skills gap before COVID. The skills gap got even wider because your point, when COVID and everybody had to work at home, now usually, and I'm just going to explain this for the people at the back, you know, industries and companies usually have buddy system, mentor and mentee systems. You have juniors and they go under a lead or they go under a buddy that then can take some extra time to make sure that this junior comes up to speed. When COVID hit and we had to work from home, that got much harder. On top of that, we also call something called the kitchen talk or water cooler talk. That's really when you go and you make a coffee, then you see somebody who you don't sit next to, who might be a CG soup. You might meet Balaz in the kitchen, go, oh, hey, and have some small talk. And he might mention what he's working on. And that piece of information might just affect what you're working on. And it's such a gold nugget because sometimes, there's only certain processes like dailies and, desk rounds where you get this information, but you get all the secret and extra information sooner that enables you to do better work and be more clarified on what's going on in the project and the process, right? And to your point again, like you said, you were a sponge when you came in. I mean, you were curious, and you also spoke about passion before. And again, the passion is the double-edged sword, right? Because you mentioned this is a hobby, and I love my job, and I'm passionate about it. So where do I stop? And I understand the same thing. So being able to go to work and say, now I'm working 9 and then 5 o'clock, now I'm not working, and then go home and switching off and being passionate, man, that's hard. Like I remember when I was, and there's two sides to it as a production as well. The benefit of me having you working from home, Balaz, and being able to log in when you're inspired or when you have solved a problem, I might be watching a Netflix show, right? And then I'm watching and I go, oh, that's how I'm going to animate my character. I want to jump in and start blocking out the keyframes. So back in the day when there was no COVID and we only worked 9 to 5 and you couldn't work from home because of, IP issues and safety issues and regulation, then I would sit down and write notes while I'm watching TV. Okay, this is and plan my shot. So when next day when I walked in, I had a solution for my shot. But now when you can work from home, I can go and jump on the computer and start blocking out my shot, right? And then where does the work life balance come in? And that's also something that is super important in terms of sustainability for young people. Don't go in there 100 million%. Only if you are that kind of person, much like Balazs, perhaps, much like myself. I was always like working, 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 working. It's not for everyone though. So you have to also understand your what's the word? Your limits, and please slow down before you reach those limits because like Balazs has mentioned many times, it does get stressful. We are solving complex problems. Sometimes we jump into a project and we don't have the solutions yet, but we're going to solve them as we go. And of course, the good side is if you're passionate about solving problems and passionate about being in industry, you're just going to go, 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 go. If you're not too passionate about that project, like we also spoke about, you're going to be working on things that you're not in love with. Then there's a danger there where you're going to be doing things later, and then that's when stress can come in, right? So I don't think we have a solution, but I think what we need to be is it's okay to talk about these things and be mindful about these things because it does happen. I mean, again, anecdote time. I can remember I've been sitting animating to a point where my eyes started twitching, right? Because I've been staring at a screen so long. And that's also when you go, okay, I need to stop. You get up, you need to walk around. Like there's some quick hacks like put a alarm on your clock that rings every 45 minutes. When that bleeps, you get up, you look furthest into the distance as possible just to readjust your eyes to something far away. You stretch, you walk around, come back down and sit down. That's like a life hack in terms of that. Get a stand-up desk, another one, right? Don't be sitting down all day. There's research there as well in terms of longevity. And I'm sitting down now. You're sitting down, but we're not going to be sitting here for long.
And I actually have something to add. So, sadly, I'm like doing so I'm smoking cigarettes, and interestingly, in a company, and I think it's all companies and all industries, not just this one, but we call it the D0, and it's a meeting room. So the place where you can like smoke outside, because a lot of decisions, a lot of connections are made there, which would not happen otherwise.
Yeah.
So in a big company, what youngsters will experience is that sometimes it's like not two artists speaking to each other. Instead, their leads have to talk to each other because the information is key, and you have to know what happens. And it's getting harder and harder to control. The more people, the more tasks. Just to like give a hint on how big a thing can like. So a 10-minute movie is around 300 shots. In those 300 shots, there's like 10 or 15 layers per shot, and each of those layers have at least 16 AOVs. And all that file structure in different files have to be consistently rendered all the time, which means that you have to have consistency, you have to have good versioning, and you have to know what update it and when. And because of that, it's highly important that it's a little bit limited in who talks to who, because an idea might get into the movie or not, but it's not try and error most of the time because you don't have time for that. It's just a hint on because for me, the complexity of these things is something that inspires me.
Yeah.
That you have the option to control like 500 machines and render, and then at some point. So personally, I would have never think that I will meet you because you're awesome. But also when I was at FMX, I could talk to Marcos. Not sure how to say his name. Fayando. So the founder of Arnold Engine,
Wow.
and I could tell him that, hey man, I rendered 1 million hours in your render engine. So I got a beer. So
Yeah.
it's it's absolutely crazy story that you would not think that these things happen, and if you put in the good energy, then
Yeah.
these things come back, and it's very important, I think, that when someone wants to do something, he will you will have a lot of, not anger, but like you want to do something and someone will say it's not like that,
Mm.
and it's very hard to accept it. But after a few years, you understand that you connect the dots
Yeah.
that why it was happening that way. But when you are in that, it's absolutely
Yeah.
impossible to tell you why it's like that.
Yeah.
But
A few
from my
things.
experience, I
Yeah.
can tell you.
Uh,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah. So a few things there. First, we don't want to encourage anybody to smoke cigarettes. So just
Indeed.
like a disclaimer there. But what you're saying is true, and it's the same as going for a coffee walk, or also being aware that when work stops and people go out for drinks or they go out for dinner together, make sure that you join in those areas because again, it's about building community. It's about building family, building trust, and some conversations that happen, at the pub, at a dinner table, at the coffee machine. Those are key conversations that enable production and also, like you said, open up doors. It's not always what you know, it's who you know. And to your point, like you said, good energy. Yeah, for students out there, get involved with FMX or Annecy or these kind of conferences. If there's like meetups, uh, I know from Epic standpoint, Unreal Engine meetups, and you're interested in Unreal Engine, go to these meetups, meet industry, other students, other people, and go in there with positivity and good energy, right? If you're not feeling well and don't want to, don't go there because you don't want to be that person. But if you feel like you can go, and I also understand we are in our industry. There's a lot of introverts. Like we are special. We like to sit in our silos and do our work and focus on our pixels, our code, whatever it is we want. But the ones who really do show and progression and growth and success are actually the ones who can force themselves to get into those social situations a bit more. And me as a teacher, when I teach, that's exactly what we're doing. Like in the next gen labs that we host with Panorama, we put people together and we make sure everybody's heard, everybody has a voice. Because quickly, when you have a team of 5 people, there's always one or two dominant roles, like the alphas that will speak up for everyone. If I'm in a situation like that, then I'll point to the person who's quiet and go, "What do you think?" And they need to be encouraged and given the opportunity to speak, even if it's the most terrifying thing, mostly for them. It's not about you have to do it all your career. You just have to do it sometimes in your career, and you're going to be asked to do it. So you might as well get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? That's why it's uncomfortable. We fear what we don't like. We fear what we don't know, and you got to lean into it sometimes because at the end of the day, we are just making pixels. We are just making beautiful movies. Yes, we're passionate about it, but we're not changing. We can change lives with our stories. Don't get me wrong, but we're not. It's not like we're working with UNICEF or in a war torn area or anything
Yeah,
like that.
it's
So
it's it's
yeah,
it's actually on my standpoint is that it's virtual. So what happens is that you have the biggest opportunity to be able to test something without destroying any value other than electricity, if you are smart enough
yeah,
to not overwrite the file. So it's a very big difference, because for me, when I come to the office on a Monday and 3 coordinators are running around with hair on fire, that one of the characters got rendered without, I don't know, face animation,
yeah,
then then you like realize that they are like magical. I mean, there are like police officers and workers who is like in the physical world, and if they do something bad, it's have consequences other than electricity. So, on my understanding, it enlightens me a lot to be able to do this without major bad things. So
Mm,
I have the courage to try. And
yeah.
regarding the introvert thing, is that by default, I'm an introvert as well, but I have a very big sense of not like trust, but like not justice, but to do everything for a project that you can.
Mm,
And and when I'm in a project and when I'm in a position on the project, I'm not talking to other people in a sense. I'm talking to other positions in a company.
mm,
And it's very important that if you can do this, then you can put your ego down a little bit
yeah.
because you will have you will have an understanding on what you want, but you won't get mad that it does not happen. You will just know that you know it better.
Yeah.
And you need to trust me on this because I tried.
Yeah.
And some change comes like a little bit. Um, so sometimes you are much faster than the change that can happen in a big system. And
Yeah.
then you need to accept it and plant the seeds
Yeah.
instead of stopping the
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah. You might think you have the solutions and you think you can jump, but it doesn't work that way. It's a big ship. There's a reason why the processes have been there. Like when you're a junior or you're a young artist or a new beginner in a new company, you have to come in with the mindset that, yeah, they've been doing this for a long time and there's a reason why they're doing it this way. It's okay to come with suggestions, but you also got, like you said, your ego. You need to temper your expectations on your suggestions and go, hey, they've probably, chances are they've probably tried these things before and there's a reason why. But hey, bring them up and they'll just, and if you do so humbly and with respect and with your ego aside, then it's just a suggestion. Then they go, yeah, we tried that, but this blah 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 blah, and then move on. Right? Don't get angry. Don't get upset. There's a reason for everything. And, maybe in some cases you will have a solution, hopefully, that they go, oh, yeah, that's interesting, but we'll consider that. Like you said, let's plant the seed and let's try that on the next project or in between projects. We can test this because you don't just, switch engines mid project or switch tools mid project. It can be very, very dangerous and costly. And at the end of the day, it is a business. So I think it's really important that you understand that the stress usually comes from time equaling money. And, when we do waste time or have lost time, that means that we're losing money. So there's a budget and there's overheads and we need to kind of hit those marks. And usually if you mess up one area, which we do, it happens all the time, then you're going to make up for it in other areas and compromise, right? So, but hey, I really want to jump into you because I know how much you guys, I mean, and you personally as well, you love new technologies. So, and I'm not throwing this in there because I work with Epic, but I think it's important. Let's talk about Unreal Engine or just real-time engines in general and why you think it's important and why it's important that young professionals understand what real-time engines are and maybe with like a bit of a foresight to the future of digital content making. Let's start there.
Okay, so my experience is that we're doing like Arnold renders for a long time, and around 4.27, there was like so there's like the Epic Mega Grants, which is awesome,
Yeah.
but really it's not advertisement or something, but it's honestly it's a super nice thing, and we tested out that whether if we can do like good fur at Unreal. And we started to do a project in Unreal. And to be honest, at that part, with our lighters, we quickly slowed down Unreal a lot with the technology that we wanted to bring out. And I was not too convinced as it was not. So it was still much better because from 10 hours, we could go like to 1 or 20 minutes. But for a real-time engine perspective and from from that standpoint, 1 second and 1 millisecond is the difference. So that they think in that.
Mm,
So and the Unreal 5 came out. It did not came out. It just was a beta or something. But I told them that Lumen is the stuff that we need. So so we started to use the beta, and actually we changed engine in between. And I have a presentation about it, and I have one key point on why experimenting is Unreal is good is because you can make new friends at the forums.
yeah. Yeah, great.
Still, But still, what happened is that, for example, if you are on a new territory, so I could like have the same project in Unreal 5, but all the furs were like super wide. It everything was the same. It was like going from 1 minute to 1 second or less. So it was like a game changing thing. And it was one parameter under the air dot console variables thing.
Mm,
And it took 3 months to find. And it went back to, so linking back to the random things and that you have to let things go, is that we talked about it after we let it go, that won't happen. And we just talking, checking like on a talk, we checked like variables and pushed one thing and the number got back to correct. And we would not have think of that during the project because sometimes it's like an effect of so so what happens is that while you are thinking on something, your brain already logged it out, and until you do not think something else, it won't happen. That's why it's important to put down the verbs. But back to Unreal. So I really think that what happened is that people a little bit felt threatened about it because it's so rapidly and quickly came up and very close to the uh, so to the details and what you can do with it. It's only a few things now, and it's constantly getting evaporated on what's the
mm,
difference. And of course, marketing communication will be like that. The new thing is good, the bad thing is not good. And in my understanding, that's the problem. So what I think is the key is what like Platish did, and they have a super nice presentation about it,
yeah.
is that it's not an A or B situation. It's more like that you have a goal to create something and you should leverage every tool you can and use it for, your benefit. So
Mm,
it's not like choosing a religion or choosing a phone type or something. But what I see now is that I have a lot of fun playing in real time in the project. So whenever I work on a project, I can instantly convert it to Unreal, get a car, and go through the city,
mm,
and it's like fun. And
yeah.
also there are many super things that. So not to mock like Maya or something, but seeing a document of what changed in Unreal and seeing what changed in Maya from one version to another,
Mhm.
it can be compared. And sorry for saying that, of course, because I love both softwares.
Yeah,
But if you see like technology rapidly going, you can see it there.
yeah.
So I love this
And to be
software.
fair,
I never.
Maya's been around for a long time and has been an industry standard at the highest point. And I would still say a lot of industries, a lot of companies are still animating in Maya. I mean, there is a shift happening to Blender now, and of course, now with Unreal's 5.6 tools coming out as well with animation. I mean, we are pushing a lot there. So again, this is not to plug anything. I think the most important thing here is what we care about from Panorama, from these talks, is to empower young professionals, our listeners, to understand what to focus on to better future proof yourself, right? What competencies. And we're talking about everything from leaving your ego aside, being curious, being humble, striking up conversations, trying to get out of that introvert, create a community, be part of something which is bigger than just the pixels. And then also, what tools are up and coming and what tools are being used. And to your point about Platige, so for anybody out there, Platige is another studio which uses Unreal a lot in their pipeline, and it's not just only Unreal; it's a hybrid model, right? They'll use Unreal for some things, and then they can rent offline render on other things, right? And I think the most important thing we can do as educators, and one of the skills that I really really want students to have is adaptability and being agnostic. Honestly, if you use on Unity, I love it. I've used Unity myself as well, and I work for Epic. But we need Unity. Unity does some amazing things, right? Especially in the mobile space. And for Epic Games and Unreal Engine, we need that for other things. And together, and both those companies, we need each other to keep pushing each other, right? And keep driving. We don't want one company just to have a monopoly per se, because then innovation might falter, and you kind of you rest. But I'm not here to speak on that because that's way beyond my pay grade.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
just an opinion from me. But like your animation skills, if you're an animator, you need to be able to pick up XSI, which doesn't exist anymore. You need to be able to pick up Blender or 3ds Max or if you have those foundational 2D animation skills, jump into Toon Boom and still understand what it takes to make a beautiful animation, right? Like those transferable skills, those transferable competencies are similar to the ones that you go through, I would say, as a technical director and someone who's technical. You still need to think the same way. How do I solve a complex problem? Whether it's in Maya, Houdini, ZBrush, whatever the case may be, you still have to think the same way. And it's those,
And
yeah.
yeah, so what happens is that the learning curve for these softwares, once you learned one, is like will convert down to like zero because
Mhm.
of you will get the information from every single software will have an AI helper sooner or later.
True.
So, and that's why the fundamentals will be the most important thing. And most likely, what will happen is that there will be a very big noise of like almost super great arts. You know, that 80% thing that from all of our knowledge and the prompt, something will happen.
Yeah.
But you will get used to it. And what you will admire is what the movies do and what everything does is that you will see the time invested in something and you will see that it was crafted.
Hmm.
Because if something you won't admire an Instagram filter, you won't ever think that someone was working hard on that, you know.
Hmm.
But if you watch a movie and if you go to a word, I have a super idea. I will tell you after. But what happens actually is that, in my understanding, if you start to work for this industry, you need to be observant on what's happening. You need to be able to sit into everyone's seat in thinking, because you will realize that you hear one thing from that guy, you hear one thing from him, and it's not connecting. And then you will see that what happens is that they have so some of the people will say that what he knows is something that should be done and won't update, and you should not become what you observe. That's something that's very important, because most often, and how people work is that you will try to fit in.
Yeah.
If everyone's mocking a software, you will mock that software.
Yeah.
And how I like to do that is that it happens when a few people gather around, someone will talk shit that about someone else who's not there, you know. I mean,
Mm.
it's more like out of passion that something is not working, something should be like that and this.
Mm.
And I know that these bubbles are only saying problems but do not solve it. So my advice, what I do is that when I'm in something like this, I say that from the three types that I'm saying now, which are you? And 90% of people are seeing the problems. 9% of the people have some idea on it. And 1% will actually want to do something.
Solution.
And even if that team of guys like don't think I'm like, what he's talking about, that plant is sad, you
Yeah.
know, because it's very important that you have to think that everyone wants to do their best job.
Of
Because
course.
if you think otherwise, in a system where you don't meet actually with people, you will have the so how you read a comment will depend on you,
Yeah.
not the guy who wrote it. And that's a very important aspect, I think.
100%. How you feel. I love that. I actually wrote down. So you mentioned being observant and being able to put yourself into other people's shoes, right? Or in their seat. I think that is super, super important as a young professional coming into a company. It's hard, but there's ways to do this. You can watch a lot of behind the scenes footage from movies made, games made. There's a lot of great BTS stuff out there, which gives you like ideas of what it means to be a producer, what it means to be a production coordinator, what it means to be a rigger, animator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And the more you see these things, and when you get into the industry, the more you have an understanding of someone else's role, the more empathy you're going to have, more respect you're going to have, the more in common you're going to have. You're going to be able to speak the same language. You're going to be able to understand, oh, I understand what you're going through. So then this is why I need to do my part better. And likewise, you'd hope they understand what you're going through. And most, companies, when they bring in juniors, they know how hard it is with the junior. They know juniors are nervous and they know they have processes in place, documents in place, also workflows and ways to bring on and onboard you. So don't be scared. It's very normal that the first 2 weeks of any job for anybody, even me, when I take on a job or a project, the first 2 weeks, I'm always like, God damn, am I going to be good? Like, and then of course I go, Chris, of course there's a reason why you're here, right? Like boom, boom, boom. And then you kind of And then you hit the ground running, you get passionate, and then you kind of spread your wings and fly, and then you hit a wall, then you build, because there's challenges, and and this is why we're in this industry too, is to solve challenges. So, but one thing there is the problem solving, right? Being able to understand where people are, what they're sitting in, what they're working with, will give you a better idea of what the gaps are. And to your point, don't just come and point out problems. I always, like my students, I'll always say, it's great, bring up a problem. You can bring up a problem, but do you have a solution, right? Make them think extra critical. Don't just come in and point at things and say, that doesn't work. Point at something and say, that doesn't work. And here's why I think it doesn't work. And here's why I think what we can do to fix it. It's never fun to be the person who's just pointing and saying, yeah, but this doesn't work. This doesn't work. Well, okay. What are you going to do about it, right? And I think that's really important to teach students, to push students, and young juniors and graduates and our employees older. Like I'll always call somebody out in a meeting if it's a dailies or whatever, and they pointing at problems. Then I would say, okay, what would you suggest? And that's when then the brain goes critical. Then you're putting them in there, and hopefully something good comes out of it. Usually it does because we're all smart people. We're there for a reason, right? So one thing we're doing, which is exciting this year, is in August we're actually doing a 2-week lab, which I know you're going to come and support. You mentioned you have a talk. I'm excited to see this talk where you're going to talk about some of these things. I think in terms of prototyping, rapid prototyping, embracing new technologies, and all these other amazing experiences you have. But our focus there is entrepreneurship and innovation. And this isn't about just creating a Fortune 500 company or a startup. This is more about thinking entrepreneurial. Because you as an artist, me as Chris Ebling, you as Balazs Kerek, you are a product. You are a business, and you need to think about how can you sell yourself, how can you put yourself in a better position, how can you constantly grow and be relevant. And to do so, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset as well. It will favor you for sure. How do I use LinkedIn? How do I create a post? How do I become relevant? How do I stay relevant? All these things, and also lastly, when you work for a company and you understand entrepreneurship from a deeper level, not too deep, but just, some different levels, you now have more empathy for the company, putting yourself in the company's position, which in turn will make you a better employer as well, because you're going to understand things a little bit more in true perspective versus just your perspective. So, um, look, Balazs, we've taken up so much time. I think what would be nice is I know you're working with AI a lot. I know you're working in real time engines. What would your final piece of advice be for young learners, young students, even young professionals out there? What do you think the next 10 years are going to look like? You've mentioned a bit about AI and how the fundamental skills are still needed. Are there any more like tips, tricks, advice you'd give young learners?
Um, I really think that uh, youngsters, so they have the option to be able to communicate with an AI differently. And sooner or later, it's very hard to tell the time range because exponentiality is a very, very interesting thing. So, but what you can see now, or what I'm experiencing in the last few weeks, I spend like 10 hours daily doing that. I'm obsessed with it because there's so much to uncover. But still, what happens is that I can see that all the major companies now does the same thing. They all do a studio on the web, and they don't want to take everyone's job because if it would happen, then they would not have any customers. So it's important to not fear of these things because we are important, not a machine.
Yeah.
And so overall, going back to Earth and not
Mhm.
things. So overall, was the most important thing I bet is that you have to be open to this thing, and you have to understand that you have the best knowledge available in the world. It's not the truth, it's not anything else, it's knowledge, it's information.
Mhm.
And if you can do like real research on something that you're interested in, you will super quickly get it. And my understanding is that in a few weeks, AI will be the new UI. So
Mhm.
people will understand that you will talk with your machines. That a few weeks later, or at maximum end of the year, there will be operating systems come out, and it's a double-sided thing. But just to be optimistic, my key advice about being optimistic is a logical advice. Let's stick with that. So if you think it through, if you live in a world where you are optimistic, then 95% of your time will be spent that you do something, that you're able to do something, and you have that mindset. And 5% maybe your life face plant. The other part is that you're pessimistic and you say 95% of the time that it will be shit, and 5% you might be okay. And if you logically think through, you want to be optimistic. And I think what Elon Musk said like a few days ago is that if you talk with AI like you would talk with a human, and you want information on something and want to learn, then you will get that information what you need. Not new information, but distilled information.
Mm.
And I think people are not looking through like what's the weather like or speak in, I don't know, Portuguese. But if you ask it what will happen in the next 10 years and have web and deep research, you will get interesting
Yeah.
scenarios. And I really envy all the guys who just like born now, because most likely what will happen is that they will have like a copilot with them
Yeah.
for certain even 40 years. But the other things I will tell you later.
Yes. Look, that's amazing advice, and I just want to echo onto that. I wish I was born today. I wish I was born when YouTube was out, right, or when the internet was out. Like when we grew up, we didn't have internet, right? You had to still learn from a Maya 6 handbook, and then when the internet came out and Web 2, which was when people can then post tutorials and everybody could write to it. Now you had all this free knowledge, free access to tutorials, right, and free learning. So to your point, I think for young professionals out there and young learners, there's no better time than today to start learning something new. To Balaz's point, get out there, familiarize yourself with these tools. I totally agree that you now have access to information in a much more exponential way than ever before. Yes, you have to also be wary that sometimes AI does hallucinate. Sometimes it does bring things in that may or may not be true. So you still have to bring critical thinking to this. And the same as when you go online and you're listening to somebody do a podcast, when you're listening to us, be critical of what we're saying as well. Question what Balaz and Chris are saying, because we know what we know. It may not be 100% factual, but we are speaking to you guys with a lot of experience. We do come from a place of passion, and we really care about the future of this digital industry. And I think sharing information like we're doing now, sharing experiences, and looking to try to improve and foster better education and stronger education will help foster a stronger industry. So, Balaz, any last words? They will yours. Otherwise, we'll sign off. But thank you so much for joining us. Please.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. It was a super nice experience. And I hope we'll see each other in August.
Of course. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, Balazs, where can they find you?
At LinkedIn, Insta, will send it. And just the last thing, I highly recommend Lanoria to be watched, because we did not cover that.
Yeah.
Yet it was before COVID, and it was an online project without meeting. And check it out.
What was it called? Say it again.
Lanoria film.
Oh yeah, Lanoria from what's the animation?
Carlos Vaina is the director. He's a super nice guy.
Carlos, he used to animate at Pixar. And funny story, just to finish off, when I was working on the Lego Batman movie back in Australia, shout out to what was his name? Spanish animator. Oh, forget his name. I can spell it. Girodes is his last name, but I forget his first name is with a J. Anyway, he was working on it while like it was starting off as well, and then like you said, COVID hit, and then it was all done offline. And it's Lanoria, Lanoria. Amazing, yes. amazing show. Okay, Balazs, thank you so much. We will share information with the post, and hey, I'll see you soon in August.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye bye.